Hari Om. Welcome back.
Hari
Hi-
Om.
Hari Om Utsav from Garden.
Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Hari Om.
It's a lovely morning with you.
Indeed.
Hari Om, sir.
Hari Om. Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Good to have you all back here as we start another week, bright and early on this Monday morning. So let's start without further ado. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishabhai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Okay, the mountain and the squirrel. The last thing we covered in the previous class. Chapter 3, the course of life. Life, its course. Life is called Anubhavadhara, a stream of experiences. Any experience is composed of an experiencer and experienced. The subject of experience and the object that is being experienced. You, the individual, are the experiencer. The world is the object of the experience. And for an experience to be good, both its constituents need to be addressed. For an experience to be good, both the subject and the object need to be addressed. So as far as the object is concerned, for a large part, it has been addressed externally. And yet there is an art of relating to the world that is missing, which we will study today. But as far as the individual is concerned, the individual mechanism, it's largely ignored. The way in which to develop the individual and what to expect from the individual itself. What is individual growth? That itself is not addressed. We generally attribute individual achievement to what the world regards as success or failure. And that's where this poem came about, The Mountain and the Squirrel. The mountain, in all its might and power, carrying all the forests on its back, developed a sort of arrogance towards the squirrel, a tiny little squirrel. A squirrel is nothing in front of a mountain. A squirrel is just another animal, just another creature. So the mountain arrogantly tells the squirrel, you can't carry forests on your back. So the squirrel tells the mountain, just as I cannot carry forests on my back, you cannot break a twig. You cannot crack a nut. So he says, talents differ. The lines highlighted on your screen. Talents differ. All is well and wisely put. Everybody has different talents and everybody has landed here. There is some method to this madness. All is well and wisely put. There is some ordainer. There is some manager who has placed us here. And we all have our little roles to play with different talents. Some roles are more loud, some roles are bigger, some roles are more apparent, some roles are behind the curtains, some roles are smaller, almost invisible. He says, if I cannot carry forests on my back, neither can you crack a nut. If I cannot carry forests on my back, neither can you crack a nut. You may be big and strong and carrying all these forests. That's not my strength. It's not my capability. My strength is in cracking a nut, which you are not able to do. Some people may be good in their IQ, but their EQ may be low. Some may be moderate in their IQ, but their EQ is very high. EQ, you know what is EQ? Uh, Emotional quotient.
Emotional.
Emotional quotient. Some people may be good in public speaking and PR. Some people may be good in business planning. Talents differ, and each has their role to play. None will be successful without the other. In fact, you will grow if you recognize your own limitations and find the right people to do the right job. An entrepreneur, a leader is one who isn't necessarily the best at everything, but has the knack of finding the right people to do the right job. And for that, you have to understand your own limitations. You have to rise above that need to be the best in everything in the eyes of others. So, from an individual perspective, growth development doesn't necessarily lie in being the best at everything. It rather lies in understanding your role and perfecting it, doing it to the best of your ability, and addressing the three transactions of life, what we covered the last time: receipt of stimuli, reaction within you, and the response you give out into the world. Very, very helpful concept, which I would urge you to read and read again and ask any questions you'd like on this concept: receipt, reaction, and response. If you address these three things in your life, if that becomes your path to self-development, we'll go far. We'll realize how far behind we are. We'll stop bothering ourselves with others and their shortcomings or their successes. We'll realize how much of work we have to put in ourselves. Now, that is as far as the individual process is concerned, the individual mechanism. As far as the world is concerned, what is the nature of the world? What is the right art of contact with the world? What is the right way to deal with the world? And the first point he made, which we concluded last class with, was that world is ever in a flux of change. Nothing is constant. And if you do not keep with the march of time, you will perish. This is not a threat. It's not to scare you. It's just an assessment of the situation. If you do not change with the passage of time, you will become irrelevant and you will perish. So that willingness to change, that objectivity, that capacity to adapt is what is essential as far as relating to the world is concerned. Secondly, you must have an optimistic attitude, not a pessimistic attitude. The pessimistic attitude is always looking at one's failures, looking at one's challenges in the world, and almost always blaming the world for it. Now, there are many times when challenges are thrown our way and we cannot explain it. It might also seem prima facie unfair. Some people seem to just have very difficult cards played in their lives. I have a friend. He's a refugee since he was 12 years old. He's a refugee since he was 12 years old. He's 32 now, 33 now. So 20 years he's been outside his home, no place to call home, always finding a permanent settlement and always in the fear of being, wherever he seems to settle down, there's always the fear that he'll be asked to leave from there. He can sit back and complain about the world. The world is so unfair, the world is so mean, the world is so difficult. But reading these words, I'm reminded of him. Look at the world constructively. Look at the world constructively and use the challenges to lift yourself, to take yourself further. Always circumstances may not be explicable. You cannot add one and one and try to understand why you've landed in a certain circumstance. And there's no point in that. There's no point in trying to understand what brought you here. What is important is how to deal with the situation. How to deal with the challenge. Make good use of the apparent antagonism. Make good use of the apparent antagonism of nature to rise to greater heights of perfection. So, even any challenge in the world can be turned around to an opportunity to lift oneself. And he continues.
Jordan says, wisdom of nature to rise to greater heights of perfection. A great evolutionist, Dr. David Starr Jordan says, in our discussion of social evolution, we must remember that the very perfection of society must always appear as imperfection, for a highly developed society is dynamic. A static society is in a condition of arrested development. The most highly developed organism shows the greatest imperfections. Imperfection is inherent in nature. Resist not evil are the blessed word of Jesus Christ. Do not merely complain of evil. Instead, try to overcome it if you can. If you succeed, other imperfections will rise to the surface. Again, overpower them. It is the way to deal with the world, to keep on striving and correcting until you reach the state of absolute perfection within yourself. Environmental conditions and situations keep changing all the time. As long as the world exists, you will have to struggle with them. Meet this problem of life by adaptation and readaptation to the recurring changes.
A very insightful point, which I'd like to pause on for a second. So here you have a evolutionist. I'm not familiar with this gentleman. I don't know if anybody knows David Starr Jordan, a great evolutionist. But he remarks that evolution is highlighted by imperfection. And the paradox is, the more you evolve, the more imperfections appear. The more you evolve, the more imperfections appear. It's actually not a paradox. It's actually not a contradiction. The least developed person has many, many imperfections, but they are not apparent. They're not visible because there's barely any expression. How many decisions do you and I have to take on a daily basis? 5, 6, 10? How many does the Prime Minister of the country have to take on a daily basis? So the more you grow, the Prime Minister has to take thousands of decisions. The more you grow, the more these imperfections will be challenged and the more they will become apparent. It's not that a person who is less evolved doesn't have imperfections. They're just hidden. So in evolution, and even in the path of evolution, this is revealed. As an organism develops, subtler and finer imperfections are discovered. Someone who is a classical singer, even the smallest of issues in the intonation or the meter or whatever, they'll be able to catch. They'll be able to catch. Have you seen anybody know of Spotify? I'm speaking to the wrong generation out here.
Yes,
Yes, sir. I know.
No, everyone knows.
We know, sir. We know.
Wonderful. So you've seen the movie on Spotify? The movie on Spotify, which there's a movie, I think it's on Netflix, which talked about the journey of that the European founder. So Spotify is a music streaming application, and this is back in the day when music streaming wasn't as easy. I think a lot of you will remember, especially I remember back in my childhood, downloading songs and everything used to be such a challenge, and all there used to be so much piracy. So Spotify was this revolutionary application. Nowadays, we easily go onto the internet, turn on YouTube, and turn on any music, anything we want, and there's lots of, you know, licenses and labels and all these things that are, verified. But Spotify was one of the first things in, first apps in the music industry. And the challenge was how to play any song on demand, right? You want to listen to any bhajan and you don't have a cassette or a CD, you can go onto the app, search for it, and almost instantly it'll play it. Now, there's a scene in the movie. The reason I'm bringing it up, otherwise it's not relevant. The reason I'm bringing it up is when they're developing this application, this Spotify application, it's like YouTube, but they're developing this like YouTube application, and they're testing it. They're testing it. They've achieved 99%. The application is working. You put in any name of a song, you search for it, it'll come up, and you press play, it'll play almost instantly. So for all practical purposes, they've achieved what they had to develop. And the founder, he gets angry. He bangs the table. He's like, no, it's not perfect. There's still a microsecond. There's still a microsecond of a lag. I want to remove that lag also. To a normal person, you and me, we won't be able to tell the difference. You need a sharp ear to be able to tell the difference. But that's the level of imperfection that becomes apparent. Most of us would just ignore it. So the point he's trying to make out here is that as you grow, you will become more and more critical of yourself. You will find more and more shortcomings in yourself. And chances are you might even slip. You might even make mistakes. He says, don't resist it. Don't just complain of evil. Don't worry. Don't sit and hold yourself responsible unnecessarily. The way to progress, the attitude to progress in life is to see every challenge as an opportunity, to see every imperfection as something you have to address. You don't have to become perfect immediately. It's a marathon. So keep striving. The spiritual journey is nothing but a path of self-correction. The idea is not to appear developed. The idea is not to appear evolved. The idea is to keep finding imperfections and correcting them. The spiritual journey is nothing but the path of constant self-correction. And the more you grow, not only will imperfections be visible within you, more challenges will appear outside you. More challenges will appear outside you. People will expect you to resolve a lot of challenges. Some of you will hold your head and say, why did I get into this? I thought I'll come into this and my challenges will be solved. The more you become a pillar of strength, the more the challenges you'll be bombarded with. It's going to happen. I'm warning you. But the beauty is that you'll have the capacity to deal with them. And that'll be the joy of life. So what he recommends is the process of adaptation and readaptation, which he talks about next.
Life evolves on the principles of heredity and adaptation. The law of heredity reigns supreme in animals. Animals owe practically all their organs and powers to the principle of heredity. They inherit virtually all of them from their species at birth itself. A human also is governed by the principle of heredity. But the predominance of the principle of adaptation or education distinguishes the human being from the animal. At the infant stage, a baby is as innocent and ignorant as a pup, perhaps more, but there is a striking difference in the later stages of their lives. The pup inherits at birth almost all it requires for its complete growth, whereas the child can, through proper adaptation and education, acquire phenomenal powers, even gain suzerainty over the world. The evolutionists aver that the world is not, on the whole, a hard place to live in if one has the knack of making proper concessions. Hosts of living creatures, even plants, have acquired this knack. They and their descendants are able to hold their own in the pressure of what is called struggle for existence. The ultimate solution, however, lies in recognizing the changeless reality in the changing phenomenon. The one who realizes that establishes harmony with the world.
Life evolves on the principles of heredity and adaptation. As time marches on, as life moves on, evolution is incessant. Now, there are two trains you can catch. The two trains are heredity and adaptation. One is a slow train, one is a super fast train. One is a slow train and one is a super fast train. You want to get from Delhi to Bombay, you can catch a train, it will take 30 hours, 40 hours. You can catch a train, it will take 15 hours. Heredity is the slow train, adaptation is the fast train. All animals are on the train of heredity. And it's very interesting for anyone who's interested in the world, the natural world, in the world of biology. It's incredible to see the different tools and techniques a plant or an animal has evolved to acquire in order to fight, the challenges that it faces. In different seasons, different nutrients, different chemicals, compositions, different things change within the body of the plant or the animal to help it address the changing seasons. Certain animals hibernate for months and months. Depending on the kind of season, the plant will produce certain kinds of nutrients. The plant will draw different nutrients from the soil. Depending on the season, the leaves will go through changes, the stems will go through changes. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Even the path of heredity is beautiful. Your own body has so much heredity packed into it. Your own body has natural ways of fighting diseases. Just the other day, I had a slight wound. And it was incredible. The body automatically develops pus, and automatically knows how to eject any infection. My wife gets terribly annoyed because whenever I'm unwell, the first day I refuse to take medicines. So, sometimes silly of me, but I say I want to see how the body responds. Your body has a natural ability to respond, especially to simple diseases. Your body will develop phlegm, your body will develop pus. For your body to cool down, it'll sweat. It's beautiful. So all these capabilities have been developed through heredity. But the scope of heredity is limited. If the environment changes too much, you won't be able to keep up. If the situation or the circumstance is too challenging, then you will perish. just like with creatures, very extreme situations, and there's no way they can deal with it. Some disease, very often humans create certain kinds of diseases because of human activity. Certain diseases are created in animals, as a result of which they perish. You can see it in lots of creatures. They struggle with certain diseases which their body is not hereditarily designed to deal with. So heredity has a limitation. If the challenge is too much, you won't be able to deal with it. But human beings alone have what is called the capacity of adaptation. Adaptation, think of adaptation as a fast heredity. Or think of heredity as a slow adaptation. Adaptation is what helps you deal with bigger, more challenging circumstances. Adaptation is what helps you adjust to sudden or big changes, big challenges. These could be physical challenges, these could be emotional challenges, these could be intellectual challenges. A human alone has the capacity, it's called the buddhi. A human has a buddhi to deal with any challenge that is thrown to them. But even among humans, if you don't have a buddhi, if you don't develop the buddhi, you will not be able to deal with challenges. You will not be able to adapt to situations. Anything that challenges your comfort zone, and you'll be struggling. So the suggestion out here is to build your buddhi, build your intellect so that you can adapt to changes. Because the world is always in a flux of change. That's the first thing we read in this section. The world is always in a flux of change. So you have to have an intellect which is able to assess, which is able to adjust, which is able to maybe even influence. So he's going to talk about that next. So he says, the evolutionists aver, the world is not a difficult place to live in if you have this capacity to adapt, making proper concessions. What is people management? What is business management? It's the art of making right concessions. It's the art of negotiating with another. It's the art of finding a win-win situation for everyone. You give a little, the other one gives a little, both of you. So it's the art of making proper concessions. So if you have this art, if you have it's called titiksha, a capacity to endure challenging situations, you will be able to easily adjust to changing circumstances. And he throws this in there. He says, the ultimate solution, however. So one thing is to constantly readjust to changing situations. Fair. And if you are good at changing situations, if you're good at adaptation, you'll be very good. You'll be very happy. One of the ways in which the leading countries of the world, if you look at the US of A, if you look at certain countries, especially now in the Far East, they are changing very rapidly with the developing world. Nowadays, earlier when we used to go abroad, we used to marvel at their infrastructure. Nowadays, if you go abroad, you'll see how far India has also gotten in its adaptation. People are not able to make digital payments outside. I went to Turkey last year. I was surprised. I was like, wow, India is miles ahead in its adaptation. So you see that same progress happening here, change. So as far as the mundane world is concerned, as far as your mundane existence is concerned, if you have this capacity to adapt, you're good. However, if you're looking for permanent bliss, if you're looking for permanent happiness, which the rare person is, The rare person is looking for permanent happiness. Most of us just want this immediate problem to be resolved. If you're looking for permanent happiness, the ultimate solution to peace and bliss lies in recognizing the changeless reality in the changing phenomena. The ultimate solution lies in going within and identifying with the changeless Atman, self. Your body is changing, your mind is changing, your intellect is changing, your Atman is changeless. One who realizes that, and we'll study more of it, but one who realizes that establishes complete harmony. One who recognizes the Atman becomes a Buddha. If you have no buddhi, you're a buddhu. If you have a decent buddhi, you're a buddhiman. If you have an extraordinary buddhi, if you have a sukshma buddhi, a subtle buddhi, you're a Buddha. You'll become a Buddha.
When you do not find peace and harmony, you attribute the cause of your discontent to the world. You believe the world needs correction. From time immemorial, human efforts have been directed to setting right the world. But so far, these efforts have met with little success. You do not realize that the solution lies in improving not the world, but yourself. You can find peace and harmony just by purifying your inner personality. When you purify your mind, you find the world purified. This is a law. The world is but a reflection of your mind. If your mind is good, the world is good. If your mind is bad, the world is bad. Therefore, change the pattern of thought and feeling in your mind, the entire world changes.
Take it or leave it. Take it or leave it. Change your mind, the world changes. Change your mind, the world changes. If you change your inner constitution, the world you project, the kind of experience you have will completely transform. Even if you're not able to digest this 100%, take it 20%. Means what? Right now, all your efforts in changing your experience are addressed on changing the world around you, the circumstance around you. Fine. Okay, keep on that. 20% adopt this. Change your own inner constitution. Address the way you approach the world rather than the world itself. 20%. We always think that the world needs correction. We always think that the world needs fixing. The moment you shift the onus on yourself, immediately there's an immediate reaction. There's an immediate ability. See, you'll realize you don't need much. You don't need much. The world doesn't have to be perfect. We're not saying the world shouldn't be perfect. We're not saying you should reject a perfect world. No, not at all. But you should have within you the capacity to adapt and deal with a variety of situations. If summer is hot, endure it. If winter is cold, endure it. Shift that onus onto yourself. That's about it. While you are engaged in improving the world around you, put some responsibility on yourself as well. It's called titiksha, the capacity to endure a difficult situation, a difficult circumstance, the capacity to endure an inconvenience. When you lift yourself out of your own pessimism, immediately you look at opportunity. Who is a pessimist? A pessimist is one who finds a problem in every situation. And an optimist is one who finds an opportunity in every situation. That's the only difference. If you are selfish, you'll only see selfish people around you. Huh? You'll only be afraid of how the other person will cheat you. If you're unselfish, sometimes you'll be gullible also. Huh? If you're unselfish, you'll be unconcerned. If you're truly unselfish, you'll understand others are only taking from you. It's okay. For me to be a giver, someone has to be a taker, right? For you to be a giver, someone has to be a taker. That's the attitude a truly unselfish person has. They're just taking. My job is to give, their job is to take. So when you are selfish, you'll only see selfishness around you. When you're unselfish, you'll see unselfishness around you. You'll see the good in people. There's a incident from the Mahabharata where Lord Krishna tells Yudhishthir and Duryodhan. He gives them one task each. He tells Yudhishthir, go and find one bad person. He tells Duryodhan, go and find one good person. After days and days of searching, Yudhishthir comes back. Oh Lord, I couldn't find just any one bad person. There's so much good in the worst of them. So much good in the worst of them. Duryodhan came back. I couldn't find one good person. All of them are crooks. Everybody has a. So, what you see around you is a reflection. The world you experience around you is a reflection of what's within you. Take it or leave it. And you purify yourself, you will have the ability to see the good around you. You'll have the ability to lift others around you. That's the beauty. We're not saying you shouldn't look at perfecting the world. You shouldn't try at perfecting the world. Again, the paradox is you perfect yourself, your own capacity to perfect the world will improve, will increase. So the world is but a reflection of your mind. So a few tips he has given in how to deal with the world. Understand that it's a flux of change. Understand that you have to adapt and accommodate the changes. There will be challenges on the way. Be optimistic, not pessimistic. And ultimately, the onus is on oneself rather than the world. The onus of adaptation lies on you. The onus of growth lies on you, not necessarily on the world. You can't wait on the world to change. That brings us to the next section. What is the course of life? Well, what is all of this for? What are we moving towards? We've talked about the world, we've talked about the constituents of the experience, the individual and the world. And as we deal with our individual inner world and the outer world, what are we really moving towards? What are we heading for? What's the course of life? Next section.
Course of life. The characteristic feature of life is energy, motion. A living being grows, moves about, executes actions. A dead creature cannot manifest any form of energy. Action, therefore, is the insignia of life. The law of evolution impels all living beings to keep acting. A living creature which stops activity will perish. Evolution is marked by constant striving and struggling in life. Where there is no effort and exertion, there is degradation and death. A human being must progress, not remain static. For example, a child playing with toys is acceptable, but an adult doing the same is detestable. Again, a young man indulging in passion is understandable, but an old man doing the same is despicable. You will have to move with time. Time marches on. If you do not keep pace, you devolve. You will destroy yourself. The same is not applicable to an animal. Animals inherit a distinct nature. Their pattern of activity is set. They do not change with time or place. They lack the intelligence to do so. But a human possesses an intellect to distinguish between right and wrong, good and bad, etc., and choose his way of life. Progress is spelled by right effort and exertion. Scientific discoveries and inventions are a mark of progress. A society which does not progress along with time will be ruined. This is a universal law. Many great empires which had relaxed their efforts become lethargic, met their own destruction. History has proved this time and again.
So this world is like a river. Life is like a river. It keeps flowing. And you have to flow along with it. Action is the insignia of life. You have to keep acting, you have to keep executing. And not stop. Where are we going? We don't know yet. We'll talk about that. But you cannot afford to remain static. So you have to pitch up a goal for yourself. It can be a physical goal, a material goal, a goal with respect to your family and your relations, a goal with respect to your knowledge and understanding, and a goal with respect to your spiritual evolution. You have to have this approach to life. Otherwise, we won't get anywhere. He goes on to the extent of saying, if you do not keep pace, you devolve. Spiritually, you devolve. Materially, you become irrelevant. You will fade away into the pages of history. So you have to have this goal. You have to set these goals for yourself. Different people will have to set different goals depending on their capacity and their interest. Now, the same is not true for an animal. An animal almost seems to possess a preset pattern of life. The kind of desires an animal expresses, the kind of impulses that an animal has, it seems to almost be preset. An animal at the age of a baby or a child seems to have a set of desires and a set of impulses which it pursues. As it grows, it seems to have a different set of desires which it pursues. And this is true collectively. There's very little individual difference in an animal. That's why they move around in herds. You can see them clearly. The same pattern. And as they grow old, you see those changes very apparent. Their eating patterns, their mating patterns, everything. As an animal grows older, automatically it will start eating less. The kind of desires it entertains, automatically it will become less lustful. It's very interesting to see in animals. He says the same is not true for humans. Bodily almost we resemble animals. Our body seems to go through a set pattern. But as far as our mind is concerned, the onus is on us. We have to set our own course. Otherwise, he says, for a child to be playing with toys is acceptable. For an adult to play with toys, it's despicable. For a young person to have lust is understandable. For an old person to have lust, it's detestable. Not because of right or wrong. The idea is, have you gotten anywhere? So the idea of human evolution is to chart a path of growth, physically, mentally, spiritually. And you have to set these goals for yourself. You have to put in that effort to understand what you are capable of and what you want to achieve. Otherwise, it's very misdirected. One of the biggest problems, especially on the spiritual journey, people come to spirituality, it's almost a fad, but they don't have anywhere they want to get with it. That's the problem. And that's why we don't get anywhere. For years and years and years, we study text after text after text. We start classes after classes after classes, but we don't get anywhere. And the reason is we don't have a clear place we want to get. We don't articulate our goals for ourselves. So it's very important you articulate these goals.
True progress and evolution is directed towards one goal alone. The course of life leads to that supreme goal, which is everlasting peace and bliss. Living beings seek pleasure, joy, happiness all their lifetime. Some seek through material and physical means, others through emotions, yet others through knowledge. For instance, a man desires wealth. Analyze his desire. What is it he really seeks? He wants wealth only to gain comforts, pleasure, happiness. So is it with emotion and knowledge. Everything you seek in the world boils down to happiness. You believe happiness resides in the world at large, who look for it everywhere. Extroverted pursuits have never succeeded in finding happiness, for happiness lies within your own person. You must therefore direct your efforts towards your own self to find it. There is no other way. But the problem is that the world attracts you with its instant pleasures. When your senses contact the external objects, you enjoy them forthwith. You do not realize that the pleasures arising out of sense contacts are fleeting. They diminish and gradually yield to sorrow. Conversely, you find that true happiness as a distasteful beginning. When you try to seek happiness within yourself, it is bitter to start with. But with determined effort, you gain more and more happiness. It is strange but true. Sorrow appears in the mask of joy, and joy appears in the mask of sorrow. It is the law of nature. Consequently, the ignorant masses discard happiness and quote sorrow. This has been the sad history of humans. The Bhagavad Gita cautions you of this paradox in nature. Its 18th chapter states, true happiness is like poison in the beginning, but nectar in the end. Verse 37. False happiness is like nectar in the beginning, but poison in the end. Verse 38.
So we'll conclude with this thought. True progress, true evolution ultimately lies towards a spiritual goal, one goal alone, which is the supreme goal of life. Permanent happiness. Purnam. Complete, whole. You seek to be paripurna, all full. Now, whether you know it or not, whether you articulate it or not, that's exactly what you're seeking. If I ask you, what are you looking for? You'll describe it in various terms. You'll describe it in material terms. You'll describe it in. First of all, if I ask someone what do they want, most of us won't have an answer. We know not what we want. That's the biggest problem. Hmm. Thereafter, if we move 2 steps ahead, what I just talked about is to set certain goals for yourself, materially, physically, emotionally, intellectually, spiritually. Set certain goals, something that's visible, something that you can grasp. First, get there. It's first important that we get there. We get to this kind of approach. Ultimately, we have to understand. Ultimately, we have to understand that what we are looking for is permanent, everlasting bliss, complete happiness. We're looking for that one thing, having gotten which we won't want anything else. We're looking for that one thing, and we truly believe it. If I get this, I will be done. I will be happy. But your life is witness to this. Nothing in the world seems to be giving you permanent bliss. Nothing in the world seems to be giving you permanent bliss. No doubt it gives you a lot of joy. No doubt whatever you achieve, whatever you acquire, whatever you enjoy seems to bring you a lot of pleasure. No doubt about it. But this, no soon you enjoy something, then your desires, new desires pop up. Your mind pitches up more and more. Enough is never enough. So Adi Shankaracharya laments in the Bhaja Govindam, Balastavat Krida Saktaha, Tarunastavat Taruni Saktaha, Vriddhastavat Chinta Saktaha, Parame Brahmani Kopina Saktaha. When we are kids, we are caught up with our desires, childlike desires, desires for toys and plays and games and this and that. We're caught up in it, and no doubt it brings us a lot of joy. We have a lot of memories. And then as time marches on, we move into adulthood, our youth, and we get involved in partnership, in career, in work, in acquisition and enjoyment, and aggrandization, and wealth. And no doubt it brings us a lot of pleasure. But we always seem to be playing catch up. It's a mixed bag. But we don't seem to know what we want. And we move into old age and we are riddled with worry and stress. He says, nobody has time. Nobody has time to seek the truth. Nobody has time to seek the ultimate goal. Ultimately, the conclusion of life, the course of life culminates in this inner journey. It's a matter of time, either now or later. You will have to get onto this. You will have to get onto this. If you miss the bus now, maybe next Janma. I don't know. But here the opportunity is rife. There's a reason you've landed in this classroom. There's a reason why you have interest in this subject. There is a reason why we have all come together to be talking about this, because you are ready to take this up. That's the idea. You are ready to take this up. You're ready for this inner journey. But we are easily distracted. That's the problem. And the easy distractions is because of the various distractions that the world presents with its instant gratifications, with its instant pleasures. The world is very, very attractive, and the senses are always drawn to external objects which seem to give you instant gratification. Emotionally, also, in our relationships, we only look for things which give us immediate pleasure. We resist from taking tough decisions which may be difficult in the immediate, but beneficial in the long run. Because of the need for instant gratification. So he highlights this beautiful verse from the Bhagavad Gita 37 and 38 of chapter 18. In the very end, he says, true happiness is distasteful in the beginning. It's difficult. It's almost like a burden in the beginning. It's like painful in the beginning. True happiness is painful in the beginning, but nectarine in the end. It leads to everlasting pleasure. And false happiness, the instant gratification, it's nectarine in the beginning, but ultimately it causes a lot of pain, a lot of damage. It's very apparent physically, it's very apparent materially. It's very apparent physically and materially. Instant gratification, quick wins. They are like pleasure in the beginning, but they take you on a cycle. Fast food, junk food, they give you instant pleasure, but ultimately it leads you on a path of disease and ill health. The same is also true at the emotional level. The same is also true at the intellectual level. रट्टे मार के एग्जाम पास करना, it's pleasurable in the beginning, it's easy in the end, but truly delving into the intricacies of a subject, and blessed are you if you've got a teacher who will take you through these intricacies. It's painful in the beginning. People will tell you, why are you going through so much stress, why are you studying that, it's not in the syllabus, man. Especially if you have young children, grandchildren, that friends will be telling them, why are you studying this, it's not in the syllabus. To study holistically, to study something intricately, it's painful in the beginning, it's difficult, but it leads to a lot of clarity, everlasting, long-lasting clarity. So what do you want? Do you seek instant gratification, or do you seek a deeper, more permanent bliss? That decision you have to make for yourself, and accordingly that course you have to set yourself in. So what course of life do you want to set yourself on? Instant gratification or lasting pleasure? It's your choice. So that will determine what kind of goal we set in our lives, which we will deal with in the next class. The topic goal of life will continue on Wednesday. Here we'll conclude today's class, and I'm happy to take up any questions if there are.
I have a question.
Yes.
Can you expand on the fact you said articulate your goals?
Think through them and put it on paper. See, when we think of something, the problem is either we don't aim for anything or we aim too high. Whether it's physically, whether it's materially. So when I say articulate, assess your position currently and what is the next achievable step. Physically, if you can run only 1 kilometer, there's no point in trying to run a marathon. Go to 3 kilometers and put in. So when you articulate that goal, when you set that as your challenge and give yourself a time frame to achieve it, 3 months. Point is, we want to achieve it the very next day. No, it's not possible. You have to give yourself a time frame. So setting the mark and setting a course of action over a period of time to reach that mark. That's what I mean by articulating the goals. And that is materially, okay, I want to have this kind of financial independence. I want to have this kind of financial literacy. I want to learn ABCD things. I don't know, whatever it may be, materially. Or I want to acquire, say in the next 3 years, I want to acquire X things. That's a goal. And then you'll start thinking backwards of what I need to do to achieve that goal. Right? It's called backward planning. So that's what I mean by articulating your goals. Yes, Vandana ji.
Hari Om Utsav ji. Thank you for a beautiful session. So I just wanted an example of emotional dependence. Like you're saying now, earlier you feel happy with certain things in the beginning and they're harmful for you in the end. And generally, if things are good for you, you may be hurt in the beginning, but then you are, it serves you a good purpose in the end. So can you give me an example of how emotionally, like you've given an intellectual example of a person doing a rote method learning or eating physical. So emotionally, can you give me an example like that? Thank you.
See, you have up till a few years ago, it was a big thing for sending your child abroad to study. Hmm? And I know of many cases where parents haven't allowed their um, children to leave, either because of their own attachment to them. I know this one girl, she achieved scholarships to go abroad to study. And owing to social pressures are also emotional pressures, right? Owing to social pressures, they denied her that education. Hmm? And people cave into such social pressures because of attachments, because of attachment to status, because of attachment to certain half-baked practices and principles. So when you're emotionally attached either to a person or a thing or a practice, that will end up making you take up a course of action which may not be in the benefit of the other person. Hmm. Uh,
You know what? I'm smiling through your answer because these two paradoxes have been the center of my life.
hmm.
I wasn't allowed to go to IIM by my father because at that time girls weren't allowed to go out of station. I'm in Delhi actually. So we were a business family, and my father had these notions, traditions, and everything that girls can't go to hostels and everything. So I wasn't allowed the reasoning after clearing all the exams and all. Also, I wasn't allowed to go to IIM. And though I accepted it and I moved on with my life and everything and all, but I don't know, maybe it stays in your mind. And now, when my son wanted to go abroad, I just let him go. And of course, he's become very successful, and my husband is very happy, though he was resentful in the beginning why he's going and everything, and he should be here, just like you were telling. So it was so much like as if you have given me exactly the same answers of what it has happened in my life. So, it's not by chance that we ask such questions. It's just to get, you feel yourself free now from this emotional baggage. So thank you so much. I'm actually smiling through the whole thing. I'm just been smiling through your whole answers. Thank you so much.
Thank you. See, there's a show called Made in Heaven. You all must be thinking this fellow watches everything. Huh? Has so much of time to watch everything, because every class I'm giving you some or the other um, tip on something to watch. But without getting into the merits or demerits of the show, I watched it. So in that, there is this girl who has parents who are emotionally dependent on her. She's the only child, to a point where they are so afraid that she will go away after marriage, that whatever marriage proposals come for her, they reject it. They don't even tell her, they reject it. Hmm? Why? Because अगर ये चली जाएगी तो हमारा ख्याल कौन रखेगा? Now, without criticizing the parents, yes, it is selfish of them, but one can understand their fear. You know? But owing to one's own emotional attachments and inhibitions, one fails to see what is in the well-being of the other. And when you have a very limited outlook, or when you have a lot of limitations in your own mind, and when you constrict yourself to those limitations, you think others are also limited. And there's a beautiful line which she says, what do you think? I'm so I'm so gross that if I get married, I'll stop taking care of you, you know to make her parents realize. So our emotional attachments not only make us um, uh, fail to see what is in the best interest of the other person, but our fears swallow us so much that we almost limit our understanding of what others are capable of, what our own children are capable of, right? um, People are afraid, oh, if my child goes abroad, they'll forget me, we lose touch. That's not necessarily the case. Why should it be the case? Right. So that's the kind of delusion that emotional attachments can have, among other things. So, and the problem is people are not educated about this. Everybody jumps into marriage, jumps into parenthood without understanding these things. And these challenges will come. It comes with every family. It comes in every child. And because people don't know how to deal with it, we end up making messes. Every family has some trauma or the other that they're dealing with, some unresolved crisis. It's an open secret. It's an open secret. Some of us make
Actually, I am also forced to say that, yeah,
Some of
something
us-
about myself also in the same situation.
just let me complete.
You see,
Omji, 1 second.
okay.
I said some of us make, some of us reconcile with them. Some of us reconcile with those issues. Some of us don't. I don't know. But the fact that we don't know how to address these problems or address these challenges because of our emotional attachments, it leads to a lot of pain and suffering, unnecessary pain and suffering. Yes, Omji, you.
You see, I come from a family which was very, I'm talking of very old times, in 1955, 53, 54.
Hmm.
When I was selected for engineering college in Banaras University, my father, my brothers, only my mother not in favor of my going. All my family members were against my going to Banaras because they thought I'm from a business family which was doing very well in business, and I was the youngest son doing most of the work in the house. And I was very happy to go, to Banaras because I'll be emancipated from all the works which I am doing. I'm going for study, for a higher study also. But my father resisted, my elder brother resisted. ये जाके चौड़ हो जाएगा, ये खराब हो जाएगा. So you see the big change which has occurred in my life. My whole family changed because of me. The whole, because it was a business family, no doubt, but the thinking was, we resist change. Today's subject was only a change, and change. We resist change, and change is the only permanent thing in life. If we don't change, we perish, as you have said also. So I am very much, because the thought came, that is why I'm narrating my own story. And I feel I have flourished a lot by going away from my house, and it has happened in my life. Thank you very much.
Indeed. Thank you for that great, thank you for sharing and then beautifully summarizing that this class was entirely about change and our ability to adapt and adjust to change. Not only our ability to adjust, but our ability to actually use change to our advantage and grow. It's not only about adjusting, but actually using it as an opportunity to grow. Any further questions?
Actually, sir, if you see most of the religions, in the religious books also, it is said that this is the ultimate, you can't change. Whereas in our religion or Vedas also, it has been always saying that you change and change. That is the beauty of our, thinking and our culture. But most of the religions are saying this is the ultimate. Although most of the things are now proving wrong also. I don't have to say, you know it already, that most of the religions, they're stuck to what they have been told by their priests and all that, whosoever has told them. And they are so rigid about it. They're so rigid about it.
So I was reading one commentary, and just the other day in my other class, we were talking about the 20 qualities of a jnani, a person of knowledge. And the first quality of a jnani is humility. The first quality of a jnani is an acknowledgement of one's ignorance. I don't know. So this person, the commentary I was reading, he says, in trying to revive our past, often in order to revive our culture, because our culture has been under assault for hundreds of years. Particularly the Hindu culture has been under assault for hundreds of years. In an attempt to revive the culture, we always try to make absurd claims about how perfect the past was. How perfect the past was. Indeed, I'm sure there was the past was definitely very glorious, and there were a lot of a lot of flourishing practices and flourishing technologies or whatever. But we try to say, oh yeah, for example, the moment you'll talk about space travel, and people will say, yes, in the Ramayana there was Pushpak Viman, and Indians were capable of space travel and all sorts of things thousands of years ago. It's almost an assumed arrogance, that we knew it all. We knew it all. But the irony is, and our own culture tells us, to have that spirit of humility. The idea is not how good or bad, or how. See, if it was perfect in the past, then there would have been. It should have been evident today, right? So certainly you must gain inspiration from your past, but also have this desire to improve yourself into the future, right? Learn from what is present today, understand what are your limitations today, and move into the future. So have that spirit of humility, and accept change, accept the circumstances of today. Okay, with that thought, we'll conclude today, and we'll see you again on Wednesday at 8 o'clock. So have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Hari Om.
So
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.